Blessed day to you all. It is beautiful fall day, October 1st. Sunny skies. The ocean is beautiful, blue, and the sands are beige and just lovely to look at. I'm so grateful to the Lord for all that He has done for me. There have been a couple of wonderful answers to prayer, and we just praise God for those days, huh? Don't we? Yes. Okay, we're going to do our snippet. And the snippet is in your pages, the first page, the Tower of Babel, or Babel. I like to call it the Tower of Babel. And we have a chiasm. Because I introduced chiasms to you, I want to make sure you understand them. So we're going to read the whole story of the Tower of Babel and see it as a chiasm. Do you remember that word from last week? A, B, B, C, C, D, D, until we hit the center. And that's the most important part. So let's just read through it just as a narrative without looking at it as a chiasm. Now all the earth was of one language and one set of words, and it was when they migrated to the east that they found a valley in the land of Shinar, later called Babylon, and settled there. They said, each man to his neighbor, "Come now, let us bake bricks and let us burn them well burnt." So for them brick stone was like building stone, and raw bitumen was for them like red mortar. Now they said, "Come now, let us build ourselves a city and a tower, its top to the heavens or the sky. And let us make ourselves a name, lest we be scattered over the face of the earth." But Yahweh came down. Whoa. That's scary. To look over the city and the tower that the humans were building. Yahweh said, "Here they are, one people with one language for them all. And this is merely the beginning of their doings. Now there will be no barrier for them in all that they scheme to do. Come now, let us go down, and there let us baffle their language, so that no man will understand the language of his neighbor." So Yahweh scattered them from there over the face of the earth, and they had to stop building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, or Babel, or Babylon. For there Yahweh baffled the language of all the earth, and from there Yahweh scattered them over the face of the earth. Okay, this is a chiasm that I got from Kenneth Matthews' commentary on Genesis. Okay, let's go back and look at the top half, because remember with the chiasm, we have it in all chronological order, right, as far as the narrative goes. But it starts with A, B, C, D, E, either words or phrases in that story. There's a middle part, and then everything gets turned around so that it's F, E, D, C, B, A. Right, so that's what's on your paper. Let's look at the A. Now all the earth was of one language and one set of words. Let's look at the A at the bottom. For there Yahweh baffled the language of all the earth. Stop right there. Yeah, it's saying the same words as at the top. Do you see that? Do you see one more thing? Look at the bold print in both the top and the bottom. And do you note anything? If you want to look longer, just pause. But I'm going to tell you. Did you notice that in the top it said all the earth first? And then second was of one language. In the bottom, the language. And then second, all the earth. There's a reversal even of the phrases. Then let's look at our B. And it was when they migrated to the east that they found a valley in the land of Shinar, which later was called Babylon, and settled there. Now you probably think to yourself, why did you mark it there? That's a common word. It doesn't seem important, but it is important, because where is there? Shinar. They settled there in Shinar. Now look at the bottom B. So Yahweh scattered them from there. Okay, from where? From Shinar. At the top, it is there in Shinar where they decide to settle and not to scatter. At the bottom, it is there in Shinar where God chooses to scatter them. So the there represents an important item in our discussion. They said to each man, this is C, they said each man to his neighbor, look at the bottom C, so that no man will understand the language of his neighbor. Then D, at the top, come now, let us. And at the bottom D, come now, let us. And that is spoken by God. The come now, let us is said 3 times from man's mouth at the top. Look at D, come now, let us. Then at the E, come now, let us. And then the DF, let us. So let us is spoken 3 times. But in God's mouth, from God's mouth, it's only spoken once. They have to keep reiterating, but God says it only once. Okay, so E, come now, let us build ourselves, and we go to E at the bottom, that the humans were building. We have building. Yahweh said here, they are one people with one language for them all. And this is merely the beginning of their doings. Now there will be no barrier for them in all that they scheme to do. They are scheming to do something. What is it? To build a tower, a city and a tower. Its top to the heavens or the sky. And let us make for ourselves a name, lest we be scattered over the face of the earth. What does it say in F at the top? To look over the city and the tower. City and tower are the same. Okay, they are scheming. Look at the middle. How ironic. But Yahweh came down. Why is that ironic? Will you tell me? If you want to pause and think about it, you can. But the irony is that they were building a tower to reach the heavens. But Yahweh still had to come down to reach it. Okay, they're plotting and scheming to remove the shackle of God's command. And what had God said? I want you to open your Bible to Genesis. Before this happened, to Genesis 1:28. And it says, God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Ooh, are they filling the earth? No, they're trying to stay in one place. The same thing happens after the flood. What God says in chapter 9 of Genesis. Chapter 9, verse 1. And it says, God blessed Noah and his sons, and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." How about that? Same thing. He's saying to Noah, it's a new creation, and he's given the same blessing and the same command. And even in verse 7, we should look at, because this is the third time, it said, "As for you, be fruitful and multiply, populate the earth abundantly and multiply in it." Scatter, multiply, populate the whole earth. That was what God wanted. What was what they wanted? They wanted to make a name for themselves, to be great, a great name. And so they wanted not to scatter. Now, how could the city and the tower keep them from scattering? Well, of course, they'd have a protective city. But how about scattering? Well, the city might get full and people go to the outside of the city and further out, but they could always see the tower. As long as they could always see the tower, they wouldn't scatter. They'd still be in the same area, even though outside the city. The city and the tower would keep them from scattering. Now, I want you to notice something else. At the very end of each section, we have the same wording, the same climax. Look what it says. "And let us make ourselves a name." This is at the top, F. "Let us make ourselves a name, lest we be scattered over the face of all the earth." They didn't want to be scattered. But look what God does. "For there," this is at the bottom in the A section, "for there Yahweh baffled the language of all the earth, and from there Yahweh scattered them over the face of the earth." Scattered them over the face of the earth. The opposite of what they wanted. God reversed, and that's what happens with this chiasm. When it talks about the men of Shinar, people of Shinar who build a tower and a city and want a name for themselves, it's all in this, logical progression. And it still stays in a logical progression after it turns around, after it reverses, because God is going to reverse exactly what they did, isn't he? So that's what a chiasm can do. It can show you God's reversal on a certain thing. Let's just summarize some of the things that we can learn from this. In a chiasm, the second half is in reverse order. In this case, it demonstrates Yahweh's ability to reverse man's schemes. Isn't that neat? Second, even though man was striving to build something up to the sky or the heavens, Yahweh still had to come down. Thus, man's schemes are shown to be short-sighted. Get that play on words? The city and the tower were built to keep the people together. In what way could the tower keep the people from scattering? Answer: as long as the people kept the tower in sight, they could not be scattered. Though this is chiastically arranged, you can say that with chiasm, it's arranged like a chiasm, the ending of each of the two sections is also climactic, scattered over the face of the earth. Yeah. Okay, now to Hebrews 11, and we're still on the first paragraph. Remember that? He has held together the 4 different people groups. People or group in this paragraph. And you remember how he held it together. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Remember those two? And then at the bottom, it says, by faith, Noah, being warned by God concerning things as yet not seen, in reverent fear, constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this faith, he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. So, by faith, things not yet seen. That's at the bottom. At the top, the reverse order, faith, things not seen. So, now we talked about what brings commendation. And if you were to circle all the word, well, if you were to circle faith every time it's mentioned, you would realize that they get commended for faith. Now, we went through the different ones that had faith. And of course, we remember that the first one, by faith, in verse 3, it says, we understand. So we are part of this group, this whole group of faithful men and women. And so we're the first. We believe that the universe was made by God. Then it was Abel. He was commended as righteous and accepted his gift. Remember that? And why did he accept his gift? Because he looked at Abel, and Abel had faith. And then he looked at the gift, and the gift showed that he had faith. He gave first of the sheep. And then the second one is what we're studying this week, by faith. By faith, Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death, and he was not found because God had taken him up. Now, before he was taken up, he was commended as having pleased God, and without faith it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God, want to draw near to God? Must have faith that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. That's the section that we're going to study today, and boy, it's a zinger. I want you to notice that I took the bold print from the top and put it here at the bottom so that we can go over it, because I want you to find 5 phrases as you read this that tell us that Enoch did not die. I want you to take some time, read it through, and find the 5 phrases that tells us that Enoch did not die. Okay, if you need a little longer, pause. Okay, let's see. By faith, Enoch was taken up. That's one of them, taken up, so that he should not see death. That's the second phrase. And he was not found. There's another phrase that tells us that Enoch did not die, because God had taken him up. Now, before he was taken up, had you noticed that it kept repeating? Because he wants you to see that Enoch, because of his walking with God, because he had faith, because he pleased God, he did not see death. And that's how it is with us. We please God with our faith, and there will be a resurrection taken up. Now, as with Abel, though he was dead, remember that, he still spoke. He spoke to us about faith through the scriptures. Yeah, he still speaks. Didn't he speak to you? Didn't he say, have faith, and you will have your gift accepted by God? So too Enoch speaks to us through the scripture. Though taken up, telling us to please God by having faith. It's the word of God that we can count on to give us a word from God. Next page. We have the first prophecy of the Messiah. Now, we're going to get back to Enoch, but we can't understand about Enoch until we see this prophecy. This is in Genesis 3:15, and it's after the fall. Remember when God confronts Satan. And let's see what God says here. God says to Satan and to Eve, I will put enmity. That means animosity, anger, hatred. I will put enmity between you, Satan, and the woman, Eve, and between your seed, Satan, and Eve's seed. He, that seed of Eve, shall bruise your head, Satan, or crush your head, Satan, and you, Satan, shall bruise or crush the seed of Eve, Eve's heel. Now, what's going on here? There's going to be, well, let me just read it from below, what it says. This is my rendition of it, okay, to make it easier to understand. God will put animosity or hatred between Satan and Eve, between Satan's seed and Eve's seed. Wait a second. Satan's seed. What do we mean by Satan's seed? Does he have little babies who have little babies who have little babies? No. Satan does have seed. He's a father to many. Let's see what John says. The book of Gospel of John. If you turn to the Gospel of John, chapter 8. In verse 39, Jesus is talking to the religious leaders. Or really, the religious leaders are talking to Jesus. They answered and said to Jesus, Abraham is our father. And Jesus said to them, if you are Abraham's children, do the deeds of Abraham. But as it is, you are seeking to kill me, a man who has told you the truth, which I heard from God. This Abraham did not do. You are doing the deeds of your father. Whoa. Who's their father? Not Abraham. It's the devil. It's Satan. So, who is the seed of Satan? All those who do evil, who do not have faith, who just will not follow God. So we have Satan's seed, all those who don't follow God, and we have Eve's seed. And Eve's seed turns out to be who? Well, let's look. Eve's seed will crush Satan's head. Who's going to crush Satan's head? The Messiah. We have the first prophecy of a Messiah, of the Messiah. And Satan will crush the heel of Eve's seed. Now, which is worse? Is it the crushing of the head or the crushing of your foot, the heel of your foot? Well, thing that is worse is the crushing of the head. And that's what the Messiah will do. Now, I'm going to give you something just a little more tricky. So I want you to watch what happens here in this prophecy, because it's other things are going to depend on you getting this. It says, God will put animosity, hatred between Satan and Eve. Okay, so there's animosity. Eve, Satan, and it's Satan is named first and Eve is named second. Kind of like we're being told who's going to seem to win. Satan, he's first, then Eve. Same thing happens in the second line. And between Satan's seed, Satan's first again, and Eve's seed, all that comes from her, which will lead to the Messiah. Okay, so Satan is first and Eve is second in the first line. Satan is first, Eve is second in the second line, as though Satan is going to be the conqueror. But watch what happens when Messiah comes. Eve's seed. Ooh, Eve's seed was second, and now it's first. Eve's seed will crush Satan's head. There's going to be a reversal. Satan's head is going to be crushed, and Satan will crush the heel of Eve's seed. And that's not going to do anything. Where did Satan crush Eve's seed? Yeah, on the cross. It seemed as though all was lost, but it was that very cross that made victory for Eve's seed, who crushed the head of Satan. So, we're talking about seed. Seed in the Bible is refers to the genealogy of a person. Now, you know Genesis is full of genealogies, and you probably hate genealogies, but I'm here to tell you they're the best part of Scripture. They hold the best nuggets, and we're going to see those nuggets in a genealogy. Now, from now on, the genealogies in Genesis will begin, first genealogy will begin first, and then the genealogy of Eve's seed, the one who will crush Satan's head, will come. Why do I say that? Because it happens, but because, remember, Satan's first, Eve is second in the first line. Satan's first, and Eve is second in the second line. So the genealogy of Satan will be first, and the genealogy of Eve's line will come second, because it's Eve's line that the Messiah will come through. So let's take a look at that on our genealogies. I know you love, or at least I can say you're going to love. Okay? We have Genesis 4 is our first genealogy. And guess who it is for? Cain, Satan's seed line. He's the murderer. Our second seed line, which will be Eve's seed line, which is the messianic seed line, will begin with Adam again, and Seth through Seth, the third-born son, recorded son of Adam and Eve, Seth. That's who the Messiah will come through. Okay, I want you to look at Cain's seed line on the left. That's Satan's seed line. Remember, it's going to look as though Satan wins, isn't it? And of course, Cain murders his brother, and it looks like Satan's seed line wins, doesn't it? So let's read through it. Cain, who killed his brother, knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. Now you know the name Enoch. You just heard about it. This is a different Enoch. This is Cain's Enoch. And so I put it in bold print because I want you to know that it's the same name but not the same person. And it even has some information about him to differentiate him from the Enoch of the Messianic seed line. So Enoch, let's see the information. She conceived and bore Enoch. When Cain, built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. So to differentiate him from the other Enoch, we're told that Enoch had a city named after him by his father. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad fathered Mehujael, and Mehujael fathered Methushael, and Methushael fathered Lamech. Now, again, Lamech is a name that you're going to find in the Messianic seed line, in the seed line of Eve, as shown in Genesis 3:15. And we're going to differentiate between this Lamech and the Lamech of Messianic seed line, and it's going to give us more information here on the left. Now let's see what information. And Lamech took 2 wives. The name of the one is Ada, and the name of the other was Zillah. This is the first record of bigamy, and it's related to someone who is not a good person. So you're supposed to have a negative attitude toward bigamy. Ada bore Jabiel. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all those who play the lyre and the pipe. Those are musical instruments. Zillah also bore Tubal-Cain. He was the forger of all instruments of bronze and iron, and the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Now, I'm going to show you this because I didn't send it through. So that you can see. We have Cain, Enoch, who was had a city named after him, Irad, Mehujael, Methushael, and Methushael had Lamech. Lamech married Ada, there on your left, and Zillah, there on your right. Each of them had 2 sons, Jabal and Jubal for Ada, and for Zillah we have Tubal-Cain. Ooh, look at that. Someone named after the originator of this seed line, Naamah. So you got that? That's how it goes down. Now watch what happens. We're given a whole lot of information about Lamech. That differentiates him from the Lamech in the other seed line that we will get to. And look what Lamech says. He says a poem. Now, that's how people spoke. But we're not much on poetry. Some of us really, really love it, but it's not the common thing. In the past, in antiquity, even up to the present, poetry was the language of people. And Lamech is going to write a poem or say a poem that tells of what happened. Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. He's talking to his wives in a hear my voice. You wives of Lamech, Listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. He is bragging about killing someone for hurting him. And he's saying, I am vindicated. Now, watch how this is poetry, because Hebrew poetry is very different from our poetry. We like rhyming and, we have a beat to it. That's not so in Hebrew poetry. In much of Hebrew poetry, there's what is called parallelism. In other words, what the first line says, the second line repeats in a different way. So let me show you what I mean. Ada and Zillah hear my voice, is what he says in the first line. You wives of Lamech, who are they? Ada and Zillah. See in the first line, you wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. That matches with hear my voice, doesn't it? You see the parallelism that's going on here? Let's see what the next line says. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man. So he defines what kind of man. It was a young man. For striking me, or, as the first line says, wounding me. You see again, he's being poetic, boastful about what he has done. Third couplet. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. Even more so, I have greater vindication. That's what he's saying. He has a poem, and of course, you probably realize that most of our songs are made from poems. If we have any kind of song, whether it's rock or just a love song or things, it's built on poetry. And so it was probably sung. And if I can use my imagination and go back to verse 21, it says, his brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all those who play the lyre and the pipe, musical instruments. Was it set to music? I don't know, but it seems like it could have been. The line, notice that Cain's line starts with a murder, Cain's brother, and ends with a murder. And that's Lamech. It's pretty bad. This is Satan's seed line, isn't it? Now, I have a question for you. This genealogy ends here. What completes and what causes Cain's line to end? I'll give you a chance to think. What causes Cain's line to end? Want to know? The flood? Yeah. It's only going to be Seth's line, and through Seth, Noah. It's his line, because that's the messianic line. It has to keep going, because God had promised, hadn't he, that there would be a Messiah who would crush the seed of the woman. It is the messianic seed line through Noah that will continue past the flood. Okay, so I want you to look over at the right-hand side, because there's a drastic change between what is said in Satan's seed line and what is said about the messianic seed line. How is this column different from the others? If you just kind of can skirt through and see what are the different elements that are here that aren't in Cain's seed line, Satan's seed line? Can you see? Okay, if you need more time, you can take it, pause, and then come back. Okay, look what's said. Now, did you notice that there were the words lived and he died, and he died. Both of those are the most important parts. I know you probably saw the years and things like that, but it's also how long they lived, and then they died, and they died, and they died. In fact, let's read through it. And if you have colored pencils or a pencil and a pen or something like that, I want you to circle lived with one and he died with another. And he died in the Hebrew is all one word. It's vayamot. Yeah, and he died. That's why I want you to circle the whole phrase. Okay? So let's do that. And when Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness, after his image, and named him Seth. Okay, remember he's the third born. Thus, all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. When Seth had lived 105 years, he fathered Enoch. Seth lived after he fathered Enoch 807 years, and he died. When Enoch had lived 90 years, he fathered Kenan. Enoch lived after he fathered Kenan 815 years, and he died. When Kenan had lived 70 years, he fathered Mahalalel. Kenan lived after he fathered Mahalalel 840 years, and he died. When Mahalalel had lived 65 years, he fathered Jared. Mahalalel lived after he fathered Jared 830 years, and he died. When Jared had lived 162 years, he fathered Enoch. Remember Enoch from the first? Now watch. We're going to differentiate again between this Enoch and the other Enoch by giving a little more information about Enoch. Jared lived after he fathered Enoch 800 years, and he died. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he fathered Methuselah. Enoch walked with God after he fathered Methuselah, see, more information, 300 years, and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. When Methuselah had lived 187 years, he fathered Lamech. Methuselah lived after he fathered Lamech 782 years, and he died. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son. More information is given about Lamech to differentiate him from the Lamech who is a bigamist and a murderer, and called his name Noah. Lamech lived after he fathered Noah 595 years, and he died. So, we have death, 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 death. death and then life here of one person who continues, who does not die, but God takes him. And why? Because he walked with God. He pleased God by walking with him. Now I have to tell you something about that walk. That walk in the Hebrew is in a tense that means continuous or habitual. So he continuously, habitually walked with God. Now, if you remember back in the garden, God walked in the garden. It's that same word, continuously, habitually walked in the garden. That was God, so that he could dwell with his people. Now we have one who dwells with God by walking with him continuously, habitually. So in the midst of death, we have a lighthouse, don't we? A lighthouse that says, walk with God and you will live. Did you notice that also with the words, and he died, we have the completion of a prophecy? You say, what? Wait a second. What are you talking about, Barbara? Well, I'm talking about the prophecy God made, that if Adam ate of the fruit, he would die. And here it is. Each generation, they died. So we have the completion of God's promise. We love the promises of God. We like to look up the promises of God. This is one promise we didn't like so much, do we? But God keeps his promises no matter what. And he said he would die, and he died. But look what else is going on here, which I think is the most wonderful thing. God had promised to Eve that she would have seed. Therefore, she was also going to live, at least for a time, okay? So that she could have seed that would result in the Messiah, who would save his people from their sin. So, we also have the word lived. So, what I'd like you to do is count up the lived words. Count them all up. And count up the and he died words. Count them all up. Two separate countings. Find out how many they count up to. I want you to put your finger on the pause button and do that, and then come back to us after counting. Well, isn't that extraordinary? The word lived is said 16 times, but the word and he died is only mentioned 8 times, half the amount of times. We're being shown the grace of God, that even though mankind would die, he would also have them live. And that is repeated over and over again 16 times, twice as many times as and he died. Isn't that beautiful? Did you notice that Enoch had the shortest lifespan? It's only 365 years. And that indicates to us that it's not long life that is the blessing. It's the walking with God that is the blessing. It is the being taken up that is the blessing. Yep, Enoch had a special intimacy with God. How would your life have to change for others to say, you walk with God. Could they say that now? So then here, why are the seed lines given? And over they're given. Next we're going to see Noah's seed line. He has Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Shem is the messianic seed line. So in the genealogies, Japheth and Ham, their seed line, their genealogy comes first. Their genealogies come first. And then we have Shem's, because his is the messianic seed line. The same thing goes when Abraham has two sons. We have Isaac and, Ishmael. When the genealogies are given, it's Ishmael's seed line given first, and then Isaac's. And the same thing with Esau and Jacob. When their genealogies are given, Esau's is given first, and Jacob's is given second. Why? Because the first belongs to Satan. The second, or the last, belongs to the messianic seed line. Well, so why are the seed lines, the genealogies given? To give us the beginnings of the battle between the seed lines of Satan and the Messiahs. And also to show us the line to the Messiah. You know, the line to the Messiah is through Eve's seed. And if we went to the Gospel of Luke, we'd see the genealogy of Jesus. So go to Luke on your own time, and you will find out that Jesus' seed line is taken way, way back. And he'll have in his seed line Seth, Enoch. He'll have all the names that are in Adam's seed line here. So, what are you going to say? Are you going to say that you're going to walk with God? Because that's an intimate walk and a beautiful walk. But it is not a walk that most people choose, is it? Bye till next week.